Hi, everybody. This is Joe, the CEO and founder of LILA Movement Technology, and I'm excited to be presenting this webinar for you, this presentation. I'd like to thank my very good friend Anibal and the team there at ErgoLab for inviting me to speak. It's unfortunate that I can't be there this year because of COVID, but as Anibal will tell you, Argentina is my second home, and I'm excited to come back soon. But let's jump into the presentation today, and hopefully it will give you some new ideas on thinking about resistance training. We are talking about the EXOGEN wearable resistance and a concept that we've been developing with coaches and athletes on something we call assistive versus resistive loading. Because we can add wearable resistance or resistance now into movement, it's very different than doing just basic body weight exercises where we're trying to increase a basic movement pattern or strength. Movement problems have two issues, and that is, one, you have to create awareness and proprioception, and two, then you have to strengthen the movement. And that's where assistive and resistive loading can be used in a contrast manner to help athletic performance. And as you know, when you help athletic performance, you improve the outcome of competition. When you help strength, it may or may not help the transference to competition. So this is a pretty high level stuff. It really combines looking at using resistance training as a coaching tool as much as a conditioning tool. So let's get started. Hola. The first thing just to talk about is to make the differentiation between something we call traditional resistance training versus wearable resistance training. Again, traditional resistance training utilizes external equipment. It focuses on lifting a maximal or external load, and it's used primarily to overload the neuromuscular system for maximal or high levels of strength, power, or hypertrophy. And you see all the examples of general or traditional resistance training. And these are used basically with resistance or weight training for resistance. You're not using them in an assistive manner here. It's all done to stress a muscle, to put a resistance on a muscle or a body part, and to make that stronger. And that's the value of traditional resistance training. Traditional weight training is very much resistive loading. So we'll talk a little bit more about when you load to assist a movement. And I think the benefits of traditional resistance training are clear. I won't spend any time on them, but they are limited in that the way they transfer directly to sport. So we'll talk about that at the end. Now, going back to the idea of specificity, I always show this slide. If we want to get better at improving performance, we have to do more than just resist a movement or a muscle. We have to sometimes assist it. We have to improve skill and technique. And to improve skill and technique, you have to do it in the sport or competition setting. And if you look at this picture, you have all this equipment here for the golf swing. And today's example is going to look at golf. But you have all this equipment used for the golf swing, but unfortunately, nobody's on a golf course and nobody's holding a golf club. So how specific is it? What we want to do is we want to consider direct transfers. Now here's a good friend of mine. He's an Asian golfer. He's a PGA Tour golfer. First Asian to win a PGA Tour event, Danny Chia. And Danny is loaded specifically with our EXOGEN top that can load resistance on the left side and the right side of the body, assistive and resistive, and I'll explain it in a minute. Danny has a very specific issue that he's working on. You can see that's a very beautiful high-level swing. And if I play it again, watch, you can see the green loads on the right side of his lower back. Oh. And that's called the right side is the strong side. Now let's take a look from a different angle. Sorry about that video. Okay, don't worry about that. What's important here is we're going to talk about the golf swing. A lot of sports have very technical movements. I chose golf because it's so specific. You can do a lot of rotational work in the gym, but it doesn't transfer to a golf course. It doesn't change golf score. It might make you more fit, might make you rotate better. But it's not going to put that ball much different, not much longer, not with an amateur or a pro golfer at a high level. And so we're looking specifically at changing performance with resistance training and coaching on the golf course in a golf swing. And again, in 2020, we're no longer concerned with just building muscle and strength. Our training is becoming more specific purpose. Heavy training and 1 repetition maximum, for most sports, it's just not relevant. Strength training is starting to connect coaching and skill and focus and technique and conditioning all together. And we have better tools that can directly transfer to performance. So assistive and resistive loading. We usually associate, as I mentioned, weight training with resistance training. The load of the weight is used in resistance to gravity to force a muscle to work stronger. This is resistance training, and it is resistive loading. Again, the squat, very simple, basic example. Gravity is pulling the bar down and the body down. The muscles contract to resist the extra load and gravity and reverse that action and push the weight up. The load is in a resistive position and the body muscles work against it. That's been 100% of our conditioning for the last 100 years with weight training, for the most part. Assistive loading adds a new dimension to that. How do we assist a movement? These are the questions I want you to think about. So where and why would you want to assist a movement? What might it help? So before I start telling you what assistive and resistive loading is, and I think you understand, start thinking about examples where you want to assist movement. Start thinking about coaching. Go back to the squat example. Well, first off, remember, for most athletes, squatting and other heavy traditional exercise are just not specific to their sport, unless you're a CrossFit athlete or a weightlifter or a powerlifter. So again, we need to get our minds out of the gym and into the sports specific and complex movement setting. Remember the golf example above that I mentioned? Let's stop working on the golf problems in a gym. Let's work on them on the golf course. So if you're working with basketball, let's start thinking about being on the court with our athletes more. What can we do to improve movement there? Volleyball, swimming pool, ski hill, the boxing ring. Let's think beyond the gym. Now golf, just to talk very specifically about a couple of things that we're going to talk about in the issue today. First off, lower back injury is one of the most common golf problems. It affects 15 to 34% of amateur golfers and about 25% of professionals. And 65% of these said the issue is chronic, developed over time. So low back injury is a massive injury in golf. And the cause is the actual swing. Unilateral rotational forces at high speed, high torque over a long period of time put the lower body at stress. And this is made worse, interestingly enough, by recent trends in golf instruction that restrict hip rotation to really get more in your backswing, uncoil power. It used to be a more fluid motion. Now it's a more real uncoil. Same thing you see in martial arts and throws, a lot of different events. So the swing in the sport of golf itself is just bad on the body. Any unilateral sport has this problem over time. So we're going to talk about this issue. Now, this is a very high level. This is Danny's issue he's working on right now. He went to the gym to get his back stronger. None of it worked because the conditioning specialist did planks and functional movement screens and basic stability exercises that had no transfer for a guy that spent 25 years on the tour. His problem's too specific and the solution had to be in the golf course. So we were looking at ways to help his lower back. And he's going to describe the issue here.
Hold on.
For me, I would like to feel more on my left side here.
Just loading through there?
Yeah, because I felt my weakness in my body, like during the downswing, this is not activating.
Not activating.
Yeah, I always use the right side to overcompensate.
Right.
That's where I get the right back pain.
Right.
It's always been the case in my swing.
So we're trying to engage or activate this other side.
Yeah, exactly. Like if I can make this part here more activate during the swing, you know, I will be really happy.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what,
So some of the key things he said: I want to strengthen the left lower back my left lower back during my swing. He didn't say I want to strengthen my lower back during my swing. First thing, he even knows how specific he needs it. I feel my weakness in my body during my downswing. So even an important part of the swing is this part of my body is not activating. He can feel his lower left back in his downswing is not activating. And then he said, I always use the right side of the lower back to overcompensate. That's where I get the right back pain. It's always been the case in my swing. So the left side's not activating, the right side's working, overworking. Somebody might have coached him in that swing technique. He might have developed that, but for whatever reason, it's there. And he just says at the end, if I can make this left part of my side more engaged and more activated during my swing, I would be very happy. So we might normally, I can tell you right now, 5-10 years ago, I might have taken him to the gym, done core exercise, done stretching, a few rotations, and I probably wouldn't have made much difference to this. But now, both with my understanding and learning and being able to use a better tool, we can address this very, very specifically. And remember, Danny's goal right now is not to play PGA. He's trying to play in the Japan Master Series, a very lucrative series that a lot of these guys go into once they move away from the demands of the PGA Tour, the second or third highest paying tour in the world. So he's got a very specific goal, and at his age, almost 50 years old, he knows he's got to get on this specific back problem to play the level he needs. The big word there, specific. So the issue breakdown. He has a chronic right side low back pain. Okay, it limits his performance over time. It's probably been caused by a general low activation and imbalance in his left side and dominance of the muscles on his right side of the spine during his downswing. He knows and he feels this problem. This is a complex problem and it requires a multi-step solution. So we're going to walk through, the first thing we're going to talk about is activation. Remember what he said. I need to activate the weak area and stop letting the strong area over dominate. So activation is number one. I want you to think about that word. Now, two, I need the weak area to get stronger. And three, I have to balance that tightness and range of motion across both. So this is one of the areas where assistive and resistive loading becomes really important. And let's talk about how. Step one, activating the left lower back. Okay, if you've worked with injured athletes for any period of time, a big problem for people in unilateral sports is one side is highly sensitive, great awareness, and the other side is poorly sensitive with poor awareness. He has poor activation and poor proprioception in the muscles in the area of his left lower back. Not walking around, not in a chair, not on a ball, not in a gym, not on a squat, during my swing. Keep that in mind. This is not a general gym problem. He feels it. He knows he's not activating that side, and we need to help with that. So the first thing we're going to look at is using loading in an assistive or a proprioceptive manner directly on the weak area to create what's called an intrinsic or internal cue or a signal that physically improves his awareness and proprioception of these muscles. This is step one. We have to make him aware of the feeling of the weak area during his golf swing, and not on a tubing that's like his golf swing, with his actual club, hitting an actual ball to an actual target with the weather and the wind and the rain and everything else. This guy doesn't need a general solution, it's specific. So we're going to place the load in an assistive manner to assist proprioception awareness and rotation with that side. And what I mean by proprioception is loading can be put in a resistive fashion. Okay, here's a 200-gram load. So let's use this example. I want to work my bicep. So where do I put the load? Well, some people would say, oh, you can put it on the bicep, but biomechanically, you know that's not the resistance needed. The resistance has to be below the joint so that the working muscle is actually lifting a resistance. It's working harder. So if you want to work the bicep, you need to resist the action of the bicep. That is, put the load down low and let it work against that load. But what if you have somebody who's injured? What if you have somebody who's rebuilding nervous connections? What if you have somebody with poor proprioception and they don't even really know how to engage the bicep? Now the bicep's pretty easy, you bend the elbow. But in a complex movement like a golf swing, he tries to think about using that area, but it's happening so fast, he can't connect to it. So we take the load and we physically put it on the muscle or the area we want to work. This assists proprioception and awareness during the movement. So if I want to be more aware of a bicep movement during a complex motion, I can load directly here. And it's just like the coach comes in, puts the hands there, and makes the physical connection saying, this is the area I want to work. We think about this a lot with coaches. Coaches are constantly putting the hands on the body. Feel this area. Feel this area. Feel this area. Feel this area. The moment they go to their skill, they forget the feeling. But with the load now, we can assist that feeling by loading directly on that spot. So this is what we did here. We actively loaded Danny's left lower back with load for proprioception and awareness. And the feeling was immediate. Not only that, when the load's there, it anchors the body, so it made the rotations easier. It helped the motion. This is why we call it assistive loading. That's slow motion. And again, you know, this guy's a PGA Tour golfer. He's got a beautiful swing. That load is on that place. Just put there along the transverse abdominis lines. You notice we always load in the direction of the muscle. Just look at the body. The body tells you the line or the direction of the load. And those arrows are actually education loads. Now let's just get a little bit of his feedback.
Okay.
Notice something else. Did you see him touch his load? Did you see him think about the load? Look at his eyes right now. He's staring down the course at the shot. He's focused on his shot, not on loading, not on weight training, not on strengthening. That integration is really important to improve the swing.
He wants to get activated, and we're going to get 3 to 5 sort of activation or contrast load, so he feels this area engaged, which he wants to work on, and we're going to switch over.
He says right there, he's just watching the video feedback. See?
It's getting a bit of video feedback. A couple more hits of activation, and we'll switch.
Again, he's concentrating on the shot.
Are you feeling that area again?
Yeah.
Okay.
I asked, are you feeling that area again? And he goes, yeah. And he didn't look at me. He's not doing conditioning. He's golfing. He's focused on his ball. But the action is working. So we placed about 200 grams. Because the torso's thick, we needed to put a little more than the under 100 or 200 grams we usually put on the arms. We aligned those loads along the action lines of the body just think of where the muscle's going and it helps you pick that location. And that direct sensation for the working muscles in this position help that rotation. It assists that. Okay, step 2. So I think you get the idea. The load is for proprioception and direct assistance of the movement. Step 2 now, and we load that as an awareness feeling. We load it for a few minutes only, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. Let them hit, 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 and connect to the area that needs to be worked. Connect to the area that needs to be worked. Connect to the area till they say, yeah, I'm feeling that. I'm engaged. I can feel that area working. I'm aware. Once they've done 3, 5, maybe 10 minutes of assisted loading, no more. Then we take the load and now we say, all right, but now we have to work the weak muscles. Now we have to work that left side. So like the bicep, we can't put the weight here anymore. You're aware of the bicep now. Now we have to put the weight down here. Now we have to resist that muscle action. So we move it to the opposite side. And we put it in the resistive position. So the weak side will get stronger working against the resistance. And that's the whole concept of assistive and resistive loading is we load the assistance to help the motion and help proprioception and awareness. Once they have that, we put in the resistance, which ultimately builds the solution.
Okay, so you felt that activation, or you could feel the load in that place again? Now we're going to do the exact opposite. Now we're loading for the resistance. Following those lines again. And it's enough weight, hey Dan? We don't need more in there?
It's enough weight.
We've got 600 grams. I'm just wondering if you want to feel a little more. 600 seems to be working, so let's leave it there. Yeah, okay. And so now these are the muscles that are working, which means the load's on the opposite side, because that's the resistance.
Okay, so again, a simple explanation. We put it here to assist the motion, corner, stable that, actually make him aware of that area, and the resistance is, because the resistance is coming from that side, right? That's the area swinging through. So when it's centered here, it anchors this area and makes that rotation very easy. And he said, it felt like I was helping me and I was definitely aware. But now we're gonna put it over there on the other side and let you have a little listen.
How did that feel?
Just feel more, I had to put more effort to do it.
Yep. Now it's, because you said, now it's weights.
Yeah.
Good. Are you making those adjustments in your body now?
Yeah, like I try to really feel there's a lot of effort, a lot of stress put here to make sure this is
right
working, you know.
Right.
Yeah. See,
Right.
like it's almost want to feel like that the left cheek is actually trying to go more exposed
Right.
than the right cheek. Like,
Right. It's coming around.
Yeah,
right in there.
yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, from there you can see this is start turning.
Yep.
You see, so you can start to see the left cheek a bit more.
And you're making that awareness now to the load, right?
Yeah.
Cool. That's amazing.
It's super cool. So the first question I asked, well, how does it feel with the resistive loading? And he said, good. He said, I have to put more effort in on the weak side. So I can feel it working. Like the weight being down here, I can feel that bicep now working, which is great because he knows the weak area and it's now being challenged. So the load's in the right position. Then the second question I asked, are you making those adjustments in your body during the swing now? And he goes, yes. Now I'm trying to really feel where this area is really working. And then when they pointed to the video, they were pointing to the video and he said, you see, I can see my left butt cheek is coming more around. So the rotation he's looking for, both him and the other pro coach could see it. And this is our very first session. So what we can see from this is it's working. The activation load made him aware. The resistive load is now forcing those muscles to work. He can feel it. He's staying focused on the course, on the ball, and he could see it on the video feedback immediately. And this is ultimately the long-term solution. You have to work the two together, proprioception and assistance, but that's only to make the athlete more aware of the problem. They know they're aware of it, but they can't feel that part of the body. The second part is using the assistive loading for 3 to 5 minutes to help awareness, activation, and proprioception, and then switching to the resistive load and this is a general program, not just for golf, for probably most sports, 10 to 15 minutes of work. In the case of golf, that's 10 to 15 minutes of swings. This day we did 5 to 10 swings per set, about 5 to 10 sets, 30 to 60 seconds of rest between sets. Make sure you're not overloading them. High speed movements, high intensity movements, you still need rest with loading. He hit about 50, these are 50 to 100 balls. So 50 repetitions of any movement, whether it was a pitch, a throw, a jump, would be maximum. Again, with weight training, 2 to 3 times a week, every other day, allow the body to recover, and for a 4 to 6 week training block. And what we've seen with elite sprinters, elite footballers, elite basketball players, elite swimmers, elite golfers, you name it. Within a 4 to 6 week training block, we can correct that technical issue to the point you don't need the load and it's there permanent in the course or in the game. So I'll wrap up now with Danny just telling you how he felt the difference between the two, and I'll explain again.
With everybody. What did that feel? We did this contrast, the assistive load and the resistive in the lower back.
I think I can feel like the certain part of the body that, you know, like when they start to get activated, and then I start to feel certain part of the muscle is working, and I put effort to work on it. I think that's very important, because like without anything on, like when you hit the golf ball, it's very difficult when you try to feel a specific area that you try to work on, or you think it's working on, but it's not.
Yeah, and you're just not aware, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know, the main thing is for me, I think, to aware where is the specific part you want to work on is very difficult. Like you put the weight on, like when you put the weight on my left hip, it actually kind of helped me to turn a bit more effortless. You know, but when you put it against it, when I try to work against it
on the opposite side,
you know, like I feel there's a lot more effort I have to put in, and I can still feel the left hip that is trying to go through the shot.
Right.
You know. Yeah.
Now, number one thing, we're going to treat this like weight training, which means we're going to do a little cool down and a stretch. I'm also going to show you a couple of good stretches just to make sure we keep that area loose. And if you've got a good massage, don't forget to go tonight.
So it was really nice the way it worked out. And if you listened to Danny and you understood with English, great. And Eva is probably doing a great job to try and translate all this. Thank you so much, Eva. I'll explain it again. Just what he said. When the load was on the left side, and as he said, the most important thing for me is to become aware. You know there's a problem, but during the movement, it's so hard. You think you're working on it, but you're not. But when the weight is there, you know you're working on it. You're aware. And he said, first, it must start with being aware. And that's why we put the assist load. And he said, when the load was on the left side, it felt effortless because the resistance is actually anchoring the body and helping that rotation. He said, but when we put it on the other side, I was able to maintain my awareness. I was now aware, but I could feel I was having to work much harder with the resistance there. And ultimately, that's why we do this contrast, assistive and resistive loading in movement problems. Now remember, this is a guy trying to get into one of the most lucrative golf leagues in the world, and he's not asking for core strength. He doesn't care about a body plank. He's looking at a specific movement that we're never going to fix in the gym, never. And we've got to find ways to do it in his swing, because that's where the problem exists, that's where the problem has to be fixed, and ultimately that's where his performance is relying on. It doesn't solve the problems of the junior golfer who needs to just get base strong, but he doesn't need that anymore. So when you have specific issues that affect performance, start thinking about creative ways in using resistance training. The third point on this is always critical. We need to work on, we're working on Danny with, it's a chronic issue, so we're doing balance and range of motion stretching exercises to make sure the two parts stay together and balance before and after training. We add in those 3 to 5 minutes of stretching before and after each 20-minute loading. We don't load for more than 15, 20 minutes with these issues. And if it's an injury, make sure you include the physiotherapist or some sports medical professional who's going to help guide and just make sure you're not crossing any boundaries or taxing a bigger problem. Summary. This is a golf example, but it can apply to any sport. Step 1, listen to the athlete. Get into their sport environment and out of your gym and watch and see the problem as it exists in the sport. 2, load the weak area with assistive loading. If he says, I've got a thing to always know where to load assistive, they'll point to the spot, that's where you start. So if somebody says, I have poor hip engagement, my left hip doesn't engage the way my right hip does, then I just take that load and I put it directly on that left hip. That's the one he's pointing to, that's where the problem is, that's where you start. Okay? And then you start to figure out, all right, my resistive load needs to be down on the knee when they lift that hip. But at the start, I've got to find a way to assist that. Step 3, look at the opposite action. It doesn't always mean left to right, too. An assistive load for that leg action of the hip action, ultimately, this leg's got to lift. The load's going to be resisted here because your hip is lifting that. But the assistive load is probably going to be on the back of the leg. It's going to feel like it's pushing up. So it's either going to be left to right, front to back, or internal or external. And you can see that from our base loading profiles. Make sure you're doing this in their sport activity. You can do this in that gym setting, but ultimately you're trying to connect it to their sport and their outcome, and that's where the problem needs to be understood. Include your stretch and your range of motion exercises, critical. And again, if there is an injury involved, tightness, awareness, have your physiotherapist or your sports medicine professional be part of the program and make sure they're watching and guiding along and can see and monitor progress. Thank you very much, everybody. Eva, good luck with this one. Again, I'm so sorry that I can't be there this year to jump in and answer questions, but Annabelle has my email. I'm going to ask him to put that up. You're more than welcome to ask me questions through email and we can engage on social media. And as always, to my Argentinian brothers and sisters and family and South American and Latin American friends and families, I look forward to coming back and thank you so much for your time. And I'm looking forward to chimichurri.